Hi guys, Going Green Mom here with another Foodie Friday. Today I wanted to show you how I do meatloaf. I know that might seem like a strange thing to do, but if you do not react to a minced meat, it can actually be a really easy way to adapt a recipe you may have already been using before you found out you were histamine intolerant. Now, for those of you that don't know, I get my meat from the butcher and a farmer that I know. So I know what has gone into this meat, and the particular butcher that we use does not hang their meat for extended periods of time like might happen at some larger operations, I guess you could say. So overall, the histamine load in this ground beef is not super high, and I don't have any problems with it whatsoever. Ways you can deal with that in a store-bought setting: I would get the meat that has the furthest out expiration date. Make sure it's a type of meat that you typically don't react to. And then I would also make this as soon as I get it home before I put it in the freezer. So maybe if you are trying to get some good to go meals in the freezer, after you've tried it to make sure you don't react to this preparation method, go ahead and the next time you want to do this, get the meat that you can get and do 2 or 3 meatloaves at once. And then just have those in the freezer for a day that you don't have time to cook. And then you would be able to just cook this from frozen however you would choose to do so. If you don't want to have your pans tied up for that amount of time, you could definitely go ahead and use some parchment paper in the bottom, line that so that you can just pull it out. Or honestly, I probably could have just flipped this out at the end after draining the moisture off. So far, getting into this, I started with 2 pounds of ground beef. To that, I added minced garlic, dehydrated carrots, freeze-dried onions, oregano, dill weed, salt, pepper, parsley. I believe that's it. And you'll notice that, and I'm about to add celery flakes. You'll notice that all of those are dried or freeze-dried. I just recently cleaned out my spice cabinet, and I don't store a lot of spices long term. I try to cycle through them. That will help keep any histamine load from moisture variations where they've picked up some moisture from the air down. And then the dehydrated and freeze-dried, those things will actually, when you remove that moisture, it stops that histamine or greatly slows down the histamine. I'm wanting to say transference, and that's not the right word. Conversion. So it's sometimes safer for me to use dried or frozen items than it is fresh, because if it's fresh, that's something that sat on the store shelves for a certain amount of time, would have had to sit in my refrigerator for a certain amount of time. And that whole time, those things are building up histamine. You'll also notice I use some things like garlic and onion, which are naturally antihistamine type foods. You could also add some ginger. in here for a little bit different flavor profile. And I have an issue with touching raw meat, so that's why I'm doing this with a spoon. If you don't mind it, feel free to get your hands in there and just mix this up a bit. I am just kind of trying to keep it a little bit fluffy and not just turn it to absolute mush. So that's why you see me kind of folding it together until it's sort of homogenized. And there's not big clumps of seasonings like what I started with. I did add 2 eggs if I didn't think to mention that. That works as a binder and helps hold it together. Now, the dehydrated vegetables will also help hold it together some. They kind of take the place of like the breadcrumbs or oats that most people would put in here. And I don't do that because, well, breadcrumbs are typically not gluten-free. And then the oats, I have found I do react to oats, whereas I used to use oats after I went gluten-free. Oats are not a good option for me overall. I still use them occasionally, and I don't seem to have too much problem in like a crisp situation if it's been pressurized. But to not pressurize oats for me is, at this point, a problem. So I am just kind of dumping these into an oiled loaf pan. I believe it was avocado oil that I used. The 2 oils that I typically can get away with are olive and avocado. And of those 2, I find that sometimes the olive oil flavor is just a little overwhelming for me. So that is why I don't often use it, even though it is a perfectly fine oil. I know some people have issues with the avocado oil because avocados do typically tend to be higher histamine. I don't notice that it's an issue. And maybe that's because my issue is more lectins than histamines. So as long as I keep the lectin level low, I'm usually good with avocado oil. Now, I just put this in the regular oven at 350 degrees for about an hour and 15 minutes, which is a bit longer. I could totally have done this for 35 or 40 minutes in the Instant Pot. It honestly would have cooked quicker if I had preheated the oven, which I did not do. And I probably could have added another egg. As you see, it's sort of starting to fall apart. Supper's ready.